Have you ever shared a small secret with someone you trusted completely? Someone who stood very close to you, listened with gentle voice, and nodded with deep understanding. Yet that single sentence, once it left your lips, quietly changed the course of your entire life. We often believe that those who smile at us are safe, that those who listen truly care, and that the people who work beside us will protect our words. But the truth is not always that way. Sometimes, the closest ears are the most dangerous ones. Sometimes, a kind smile hides a careless heart. This is a story of an ordinary man who, simply by admitting his exhaustion, lost everything. In the heart of a city that never slept, choked with dust, noise, and the pressure to survive, John lived a quiet life like countless others. He worked as a laborer at a large cement factory on the city's outskirts, a place where machines never fell silent and heavy sacks of cement were hauled from early morning until late afternoon. For 8 years, John woke before dawn every single day, splashed his face with cold water, ate a simple breakfast, and pulled on his faded blue uniform, soaked with dust and sweat. The road to the factory never changed. The familiar tea stall never changed. Life repeated itself endlessly. To John, working hard was a duty, and staying silent was the only way to survive. There is a truth that often startles people. The one who endures the most is usually the one who never complains. John was no different. Each evening, when his body was worn down after hours of backbreaking labor, he still walked through the door with the same familiar smile. His wife quietly managed every meal, every expense, without a word of complaint. Their young daughter would run up and cling to his dust-covered legs, as if they were the safest place in the world. Those small embraces were what kept John loyal to silence. He accepted the pain. He accepted the exhaustion, because he believed that a man was allowed to grow weak, but his family was never allowed to lose its support. And while everyone saw him as strong, no one noticed that he was slowly wearing himself away, day after day. At the factory, John was the kind of worker managers rarely noticed, because he never caused trouble. He always arrived early, worked quietly, and left on time. No arguments, no complaints, no demands. To his co-workers, John seemed kind, reliable, and easy to work with. He took on the heavier loads, stepped in to help when needed, and never expected recognition in return. That very silence and dedication led everyone to assume John would always endure, that he would never resist or speak up. And because of that, he slowly became invisible within the system. No one truly knew what he was thinking. No one asked how he felt. And when someone so quiet is misunderstood, there's often no voice loud enough to stand up and protect him. Among the people John trusted most was Mike, a co-worker who always seemed friendly. Mike talked a lot, laughed loudly, often asked about John's family, and appeared genuinely interested in his life. During their short breaks, Mike stood close, listened, and made John feel less alone in the noisy factory. Gradually, John came to believe that Mike was a friend, someone he could share the things he couldn't say to others. What John didn't realize was that Mike's closeness didn't come from compassion, but from a desire for attention. Mike liked knowing secrets. He liked being at the center of whispered conversations. And that confusion between friendliness and trustworthiness quietly opened the door to tragedy. Inside John's body, a quiet battle was unfolding. The job remained the same, but his strength no longer did. By mid-afternoon, his legs trembled. His back ached as if every muscle were being stretched to its limit, and his mind grew heavy under the endless roar of machines. Yet John never blamed the factory or hated his work. He never thought of walking away or pushing back. All he wished for was something very small, a single day with lighter work, so his body could breathe. But even that simple thought tore him apart. If he spoke up, he feared being seen as weak. If he stayed silent, he knew he was slowly running out of strength. And in that moment of exhaustion, John chose to trust the wrong person. That afternoon, after a shift heavier than usual, John walked out of the factory gates alongside Mike. The sun hung low in the sky, his shoulders burned with pain, and his breathing was labored. For the first time in years, John stopped, took a deep breath, and spoke the truth he had always kept hidden. He said his body was tired, that the cement bags felt heavier with each passing day, and that he was only considering asking for lighter work for a single day to rest. There was no bitterness, no intention to quit, just the honesty of a man pushed to exhaustion. Mike nodded, placed a hand on his shoulder, and said he understood. That show of empathy made John feel lighter, convinced that he had finally shared his burden with the right person. John had no idea that the moment he spoke, the truth began to bend. The next morning, during a break, Mike leaned in toward a few co-workers and retold the story in a very different way. John's exhaustion became dissatisfaction. His wish for a single day of rest turned into a sign that he could no longer handle the job. Those who listened added worried looks, then passed the story on to others, whispering words that sounded heavier each time. The story no longer belonged to John. With every retelling, it lost a piece of truth and took on fear and suspicion instead. In just one day, a moment of honesty was torn apart and reassembled into something completely different, something far more dangerous, with no way back. Rumors spread faster than any machine inside the factory. From a few initial whispers, the story quickly reached the shift leader, then the supervisors. At every level, fear was added like another layer of cement. One person heard that John wanted to quit. Another believed he was dragging down workers' morale. No one stopped to verify the truth, because truth takes time, and rumors do not. The managers, afraid of responsibility and afraid of losing their positions, chose to pass the worry upward. By then, John was no longer just a tired worker. He had become a problem that needed to be dealt with quickly. And when a human being is reduced to a problem, his fate is often decided long before he ever gets a chance to speak. By the time the story finally reached senior management, it no longer resembled the truth. Wrapped in fear and speculation, John was painted as a potential threat to the factory's stability. The owner, a man who valued loyalty above all else, heard the two most dangerous words of all: dissatisfaction and instigation. Under the pressure of profits and the fear of worker unrest, he didn't think about verifying the facts or listening to the man at the center of it all. He thought only of acting fast, before things slipped out of control. A decision was made behind closed doors, based on rumors rather than a human being. And from that moment on, John's fate was no longer in his own hands, but in the fear of others. The next morning, John arrived at the factory, as he always did. He greeted the gatekeeper, clocked in, pulled on his gloves, completely unaware that his life was about to change direction. Before he could reach his work area, two security guards stopped him and asked him to follow them. Inside a cold, silent office, John was accused of betrayal, spreading negativity, and posing a threat to the factory. He tried to stay calm and explain that he had only asked for lighter work for a single day because he was exhausted. But his words no longer mattered. The decision had already been signed. John was fired on the spot, his final paycheck placed on the table like a full stop. He walked out of the factory gates under whispered stares. Carrying an injustice he had no words left to defend. In the days that followed, everything fell apart faster than John had imagined. The rumors took on a life of their own beyond the factory walls. People whispered that he was dishonest, that he caused trouble. Some even said he was dangerous. Every place John went to ask for work closed its doors before he could explain a single word. At home, the silence grew heavier each day. His wife stared at the piling bills without daring to ask, and his young daughter stopped asking when her father would go back to work. Their savings slowly drained away, and so did John's faith in people. He began to understand that losing a job was not the most painful thing. The deepest wound was having his dignity stolen, while being unable to defend himself against words he had never spoken. After many sleepless nights, John made a quiet decision, not out of anger and not out of resentment, but because he was simply too tired to keep holding on. One early morning, while the city was still asleep, John packed a few old clothes into a small bag. He looked around a familiar house, the place that had once been his emotional refuge after each long workday, then bent down and gently kissed his sleeping daughter on the forehead. He didn't wake his wife. He didn't explain. Some pain cannot be put into words. John left the city where he had spent nearly all of his youth, carrying a name that had been misunderstood and a life abruptly cut short. He went in search of work in a distant place, somewhere no one knew his past, where he could start over from nothing, even though the scars inside him remained untouched. Weeks after John had left, while reviewing security camera system for an unrelated incident, a manager suddenly noticed footage of John from his final days. John worked quietly, kept to himself, didn't gather in groups, and showed no sign of agitation or incitement. The realization weighed heavily on the manager's chest. When he questioned Mike again, the truth finally came out. John had only been tired and had asked for lighter work for a single day. Nothing more. By the time this reached the owner, regret set in, but it was too late. No one knew where John was. No apology was strong enough to bring him back. His workstation stood empty, and his story remained as a silent scar, a reminder that some mistakes, once recognized, leave no chance for correction. John's story is not just about a sentence being misunderstood. It is about the cost of placing trust in the wrong place. A moment of exhaustion, when it falls into the wrong ears, can turn into a verdict. A small truth, passed through too many mouths, becomes a weapon. The deepest pain is not losing a job, but being condemned for thoughts you never had. Some people listen not to understand, but to use what they hear. Some smiles do not offer safety. And in certain places, silence is not weakness, it is self-protection. This story reminds us that not every pain should be shared, and not everyone deserves your truth. Wisdom is not only knowing what to say, but knowing when to hold back. Because sometimes a single spoken sentence can take away an entire life.